Hello to my viewers. Welcome to another video on social science research methodologies course. The subject of this presentation is what are variables? In this presentation, I'll cover a series of important topics in relation to variables. I will cover what the variables are, what are data as measurement units of variables, what types of data are there, and example of a data sheet or data set. So please follow this video until the end because there are a lot of important information I'll cover in this presentation. Now, let's talk about variables and what they are. A variable has different meaning in different contexts. However, in statistical research and analysis, a variable is any attribute of an object or any characteristic that take on different value and also acts as an attribute of an object. So, for example, you're going to study Egypt's economy, or you're going to test a hypothesis in relation to Egypt's economy, and the building blocks or the objects or the indicators that you study as, as part of your analysis or that you test as part of your study are the variables. In this case, the variables are GDP, balance of trade, CPI, PPI, or other economic indicators. So these economic indicators work as characteristics of uh, of your object, which in this case is studying the economy or economy itself. So the economy itself, being an object, have a series, a vast variety of variables that actually attribute economy. And as I just mentioned, it could be GDP, balance of trade, CPI, PPI, inflation, a trade deficit, dozens of other economic indicators um, that act as the attributes of the economy of a country. Now, let's move on to data. Data is the measurement of a variable. Data is pretty much any value or record related to a variable. I know the word data is often used in the field of data analytics and statistics, but it's also used in other contexts and other fields, but it has the same implication where it represents a record or a value that uh, that explains or introduces a variable. Uh, Data are generally categorized into two categories, into two classes of quantitative and qualitative or categorical. Uh, while quantitative data is pretty much the number data or numbers that represent real amounts. For example, numbers that can be put on that can be used for arithmetic functions. For example, that can be added or divided or any other sort of arithmetic or mathematical operations could be conducted on them. While the qualitative data, which I will come to in a second, on the next slide, is the vice versa, where you're working with categories, where each category represents a group of a group or a category of data. So quantitative data are two types. Continuous data is the type of data that measures a continuous or infinite values. For instance, we can have distance, for example, which can take on infinite values with, let's say, decimal values that could be explained infinitely. For instance, distance of point A to point B could be 3.43333 kilometer or miles, or height of someone that could take on values with fractions and decimals. So it's continuous because continuous or infinite values, or values that can be manipulated, that could be actually explained in ways that could be also changed in other attributes. For example, changing a miles to kilometers. So they both are continuous variables. However, they both represent this. They both measure distance, but they're continuous, and they both have the attribution of having infinite values. So that was continuous. On the other hand, the discrete variable is the opposite. It is number. The difference is that it's not continuous. You could not have decimals. You cannot have infinite values. It's just discrete value. And discrete value in this case could be number of students in a class. You can't have 3.4 student or 6.5 student. You only have either 16 or 7 student. And there's no decimals or fraction involved. There's no continuity of values involved in a discrete data. Another example could be number of cars. We can't have 3.5 cars or zero point 0.3 cars. It's discrete. Either you have one car or you have two cars. Um, and qualitative data, again, qualitative data or uh, categorical data that represents categories, names, groups, etc. And they're commonly classed into three categories: nominal, binary, and ordinal. Nominal data, or as the name implies, are name data or categories where there are no order or numerical ranking involved between in them. Examples could be names of countries, colors, etc. Binary data, on the other hand, are dichotomies where there are two values involved, two categories involved. For instance, true or false, or heads or tails, etc. Lastly, ordinal data or values that have a ranking involved in them, or they have orders involved in them. For instance, a ranking scale of first, second, or although this is numbers that are changed into ranking. We can also have nominal data that could have a ranking or order in them. For example, excellent, fair. While excellent is a higher ranking than fair. So any again, ordinal data is any data that have order ranking embedded in them. And lastly, this is an example of a data set or a data sheet where we have multiple variables involved here. And variable, although conceptually, as I explained, or attributes of an object or any characteristic that take on values, but when you look at it from a very technical visual viewpoint, it's nothing but the way it's nothing but a field or column, and that's the way they're depicted or represented on a sheet or on a data set. So in this case, low or close or high, each of these are represent or variables that represent that represent as an attribution to an object or information or country. While these are numerical or quantitative data, country is a nominal data. I hope that this video was helpful in delivering knowledge of what a variable is. Thank you for your time.